What I'm doing here is just showing a couple of examples of how you could give the illusion that you've created an app where you're sliding between different screens or panes on that. And I'm going to do this with a combination of Photoshop and PowerPoint, just so you kind of have an idea of how long each one of them takes to accomplish and which one kind of fits what you're trying to do the best. So on this particular thing, I have 3 different layers that emulate 3 different pages of an app sliding between screens. And now you have each of these on a different layer. I'm going to go up to Window, and I'm going to pull down to Animation in Photoshop. A lot of times this is what you get for the very first starting point, and this is the timeline mode, and it is really nice. You get a lot of extra features by doing this, but the simplest way to do this is to say convert this to frame animation. So it's showing that my first frame is this particular thing. I think this is probably the default. And then what I would end up doing, set this to the default here too. And what I end up doing is I set a second page, and on the second page I'm going to turn on that second screen, and then I'm going to make a third page in my timeline, and I'm going to turn on the fourth screen. And then I'm going to click between each of these first 2 objects, my first screen and my second screen down here in the animation frames timeline, and I'm going to click this button here which is called Tweens, and I'm going to just say 5 screens. Click OK, and then you're seeing here the kind of the transparency between those different steps. And then this is my full second window, and this is my third one. I'm going to do the same thing. Click the shift to hold both of those down. Hit this, and do this. The only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set all these kind of in-between stages to not be 2 seconds apiece, but set them to be like 0.2 seconds. And then frame 7 is my complete second window, so I'm going to do the same thing on these ones. Change them to only be 0.2 seconds. Then if I go back to the very first window and hit play, it's going to wait 2 seconds, then it's going to fade. It's going to sit there for 2 seconds, then it's going to fade. And since I have this set up down here, which is probably the default to be forever, it's going to continue to loop again and again and again. So this is one way to do this, although I don't think it really looks too much like what you actually see to emulate the sliding of screens on an app, but it's not bad. I could definitely change this from forever to once, and that way it would only run through at one time, and then when it stops forever. But that's one way to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do something a little bit more complicated because I think this might be a good starting point. It's the same basic premise. I've turned on my animation palette, and I've already adjusted this to be to the animation frames mode rather than the timeline mode. But if you can see here on my layers, the pictures aren't showing up, and that's because I've actually slid them off the screen so they're hanging out here in the mat. What I'm going to do is the same type of thing. I'm going to leave this to set for once, and I'm going to hit the new button. And on this particular one, all I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the window pane over. And then I'm going to hit the new button, and I'm going to go to this layer, and I'm going to slide this thing over. Now, it's not actually recording the speed at which I slid those things over. It's just saying I know that it's going to start with nothing, and it's going to move from the right to the left. And then I'm going to click the tween command between these, and I'm going to say, let's do 10, but I'm going to also turn off the opacity and the effects so that the only change it's using for this transition is the position, which was off the screen sliding over. I'll click OK, and then I'm going to grab frame 12, which is my full second panel, and this one, and I'm going to do the exact same thing, 10 steps, with the only change being the position. And then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to click almost all of these windows and say that I want to adjust the length of this to just be 0.1. And I'm going to find frame 12, which is the full second screen, and I'm going to change the delay on it to be, let's just say 3. I'll do the same thing on the very first one too. Wait 3 seconds before you even start to do any kind of change. And then I'll go ahead and do that here on the very last one too. I'll just set it for something longer like 10. So now that I'm kind of done with this, I probably want to save this layered Photoshop file so it would have this activity that would be stored with it in case you wanted to make a minor adjustment. And I don't go, and then when I'm done setting that as a layered Photoshop file, I don't want to go to File Save As or to File Export. Instead, I'm looking for Save for Web and Devices. When I get to this window, I'm going to leave, unless you know what all this is, the color palettes alone. The only thing I'm double checking down here is the animation looping options, because on default it might be set here as forever, and even if this says once, this is the panel that's going to override it. So I'm going to want to make sure this says once, and then I'm just going to hit save. And as long as I'm here, I'm going to show you one more slightly complicated thing. I already have the animation saved up on this as well. I'm going to turn a bunch of these windows, or these layers, off, just to show this is what I started with here. A mock-up of an iPhone with a complete frame, transparent in the middle, transparent all the way around the edges. Well, I then came in here and put this particular one, and then I'm going to go ahead and slide these things over off to the side, but I didn't want them to slide into view. I only wanted them to show up when they actually popped underneath this black part of the frame. So the simplest way to fix this, rather than making a complicated mask or anything, is just to put a little white box there. And that'll hide that page sliding on over, so the first time you see it, it'll be poking inside the frame here rather than off the edge of the screen. And then I went ahead and clicked this just so that you can see that as well. But otherwise it's the same premise as the last one I did. And I'll hit save. Now I'm going to go into PowerPoint, and all I've done here is I made a page where I imported one where I didn't have this window here, and I imported a second one where I had this. Let's just take a quick peek at what this looks like. So I'm going to go to this slide frame. This is the page before. I hit the next page, and now you're going to start to see these things move. And you're going to see that I have different timings set up on them. It's not moving at the exact same speed, but on both of them you have the illusion of something moving. This one you can also tell though that I must have had that loop button still set, because it just didn't stop after one. It's continuing to go through the whole thing. So that's one way I can do that. And to get these objects here on the page, I've just gone Insert, Photo, Picture from File, and I've placed the GIFs, which is the file that Photoshop saved out by going to that Save for Web or Mobile Devices window. What if you just wanted to do it all in PowerPoint and you didn't want to mess with anything inside Photoshop? That's fine too. So I'm going to go to this page that I set up, and I'm going to go ahead and just delete these custom animations and start from scratch on them. By the way, to get this window up, it's View, Custom Animation. And all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to slide these pictures off to the side to see what I've done. I've placed my three different panes right on top of each other. And what I'm going to have this to say is that when the page opens, it's just going to show this one. And then what I'm going to want to do is when I finally get ready for it and I want to click, then I want this thing to slide on over. So what I'm going to do is I've gone to the animation tablet here. I'm going to hit fly in. I'm going to wait a second, change the effect to be fly from right. And I could adjust this here if I wanted to, but I'm just going to do it down here. I want it to be fast, but not very fast. And I want this one to move on click. And then I'm going to move the top one over. And this one I'm going to kind of set up the same way. I'm going to tilt to fly in. I'm going to wait a second. Change this to be from right. Also make this be fast. But on this one, instead of setting it up to be on click, which I could, I'm going to tell it to do with previous, which means it's going to respond to the last click on the page, which was window pane 2, and I'm going to tell it to wait 3 seconds. So now what this is going to do is when I go to my slide viewer and I hit the advanced page button, nothing is going to happen because that second window is waiting for my very first click. When I hit click, that one slides over, and now it's waiting 3 seconds to automatically move that one over. And obviously, if that's not the right speed for your presentation, you can go back and adjust whether you wanted this third pane to be on a click, or whether you wanted it to only wait 2 seconds, or if you wanted it to wait 3. Same type of thing on this thing. If you didn't like the speed that these are moving on, that's why I'd make sure that I'd save the layered Photoshop file as well. You could always go back to this document and easily just change, hey, you know what, I don't want this to wait 3 seconds before it begins. I want it to jump on in and do it after 2, or I need a longer setup to give me more time to speak. So I want to change this to 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 6 seconds, or whatever. But those are a couple different ways to work between either animating the GIF in Photoshop and importing it into PowerPoint, or just doing all of the animation in PowerPoint. And obviously, if you don't even want to do that, you could also just say, here's the home page of my app, and here I could describe by a little bit of text up here. Here's what happens when you swipe right, screen 1, screen 2, screen 3, and here's what happens if you go in a different direction to use another function on the app, is if you were to swipe left, it would move to this page, and this page without any animation being set up on this at all. So just a couple of simple ways to be able to do this.